I was like, Julie, that's like a little bit too much. But I was like, also, I'm obsessed.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Off to Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater from the comfort of my car. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we're talking all about Across the Universe, but really we're doing this episode so we can talk a lot more about Julie Taymor.
That's true. She is an interesting career, and I think Across the Universe maybe exemplifies everything great and also not great about her work.
Yes, totally agree. Also, look at us. This is like our third movie musical back to back to back here.
Content starved, okay? Get me back in the theater. Get me back.
I know. And guess what? It's going to happen this summer. There's actually, like, before we jump into this, there's some really cool things happening in Toronto in outdoor spaces. And, like, we cannot wait to check that stuff out. Stratford, hopefully, fingers crossed, is going to open up their stuff super soon. I know Shawfest is doing a lot. So things are happening in Canada, everybody.
High Park has a lot of fun things. Original musical in High Park this summer. So can't wait.
There'll be some hopefully new theater content towards the end of this year for us, and we are very excited about that. But for now, we are sticking with the movie musical. I just love that, like, we've been asked many times to do episodes on movie musicals. And instead of just giving a full movie musical episode, we've divided it into different movies. So here we are.
We gotta, like, stretch it out.
Yes.
We can't waste all the content on one episode.
Exactly. So this one's kind of random. You messaged me one day and was like, should we do an episode on Across the Universe and then relate it back to Julie Taymor? And I was like, yeah, why not? And I feel like you, same as me, I have not watched this movie for probably over 10 years now. And to see it again was like, I remembered some of the standout moments, but most of it, I was like, this is brand new material to me.
Yeah, there are vivid memories with this movie, very like visual things that stick out to me, pictures that I remembered, but I didn't necessarily remember exactly everything that happened in it.
So I guess my question for you is, why did you want to talk about these two things together?
Well, we're always talking about Julie Taymor. Actually, let's flash back over a year now. Over a year ago, we did a theater-themed movie mystery, virtual.
Murder mystery.
Murder mystery. It was so fun. And my character's name was Julie Taymor, which was obviously, inspired by esteemed director Julie Taymor. And I had such a good time playing her, but it made me super interested in kind of her process. Also last year we talked about Spider-Man a lot, and and I read the book, The Song of Spider-Man, by Glenn Berger, which was also very interesting. And that book was kind of a love letter to Julie Taymor. Glenn Berger really was kind of like really enamored with her, and then kind of struggled when at the end of the project she was kicked off and he still had to work on it. And I think he really like loved the process of working with her, however also saw everything that was going wrong with what was happening. So it was a really interesting perspective. But the one thing was like he just wanted to like make Julie happy and like enact Julie's vision, and obviously everything went awry at the end, but it was really kind of like a love letter to her and her work. And it also talked about Across the Universe a bit in that book, because when they were working on Spider-Man, Across the Universe had just come out to kind of middling bad reviews.
Yeah.
And that impacted her and the way she was working and the public perception around her. So it's just interesting stuff. And then so when we're trying to brainstorm episode ideas, we're always kind of messaging each other. What about this? Do you like this? And this one was kind of like, maybe Tara will like this. And you were like, immediately, yes.
Yeah. I was like, if there's a chance to talk about Spider-Man, obviously I'm in. And I'm actually excited to like dive deeper into that because, again, I've seen this show twice. We did get to talk to Jake Epstein a bit about it last year. You read the book. There's like so many layers to this musical that I can't wait to dive more into. But first, let's talk about the reason that we are here, which is for Across the Universe. For anyone that has not seen this movie, it is like a Beatles jukebox musical.
Yeah.
I would say that if you ask me to give a synopsis, I'm not sure I could do it.
It's an original narrative, so it's not like about the Beatles. It is about, it
Yes.
takes place in the 60s during Vietnam War, the draft, and Jude, obviously, goes from the UK to America, makes friends with this guy, Max, and his younger sister, Lucy. I'm like, what are their names? But they're such obvious names when you think about it. Yeah. His younger sister, Lucy, and they kind of fall in love. And Max is drafted into the war, and Lucy becomes an activist and protests against it, but Jude is less involved, and blah, 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 blah. They sing All You Need Is Love on a Roof. I don't know.
Yes. I do think that the political route is the correct way to go for this movie, because the underlying tone of all of the lyrics are pretty political for the Beatles. So that does feel right to me. And I think, as we've said off the mic, the war stuff is the best part of this movie. The way that it's visualized is very good. This is also a movie that is so over the top. Like, what is the budget for this movie? Because
I don't know.
Insane.
I wonder if we can find that out. Let me check IMDb and see what they said for the budget of this movie.
And while you're doing that, Across the Universe actually premiered here in Toronto at TIFF in 2007. And as Steph said, stars Jim Sturgis and Evan Rachel Wood, who has a beautiful voice, which I forgot about. Obviously, she is Elsa's mother in Frozen 2 and gets to sing in... Yeah. She sings in what might be the best song in Frozen 2, which is obviously Show Yourself. And I completely forgot that she was a singer. And then she started singing. I was like, oh, here we are.
Does she have an album? Am I making that up?
That kind of sounds right. Honestly, the only thing that I think of Evan Rachel Wood is Dolores from Westworld. And no, I have not kept up with Westworld, but that season 1 Dolores is like really the only thing that I think about when I hear her name.
She was great in that. Budget $70 million, which is big, but not huge. I mean, for 14 years ago, it was big, but now it seems almost quaint. $70 million.
Well, also, if you think about it, Spider-Man was only $5 million more than that. So,
but that's true. But theater is much more difficult to recoup on.
Does it say where they filmed? I just wonder, because of like the beach scenes and the random like water scenes that happen. Like, where was that?
I think. Okay, I'm checking IMDb. Cavern Club in Liverpool. Okay. A lighthouse in the UK, then New York, New York, UK, New Jersey.
Yes. Shout
out. New York. Yeah, so mostly New York and UK. So they filmed on location, it seems, in like some studio stuff.
Yeah. And I think the on-location stuff obviously works, again, for the tone of this movie, which, as I said, super over the top. But something that I appreciated with this movie is that they kept that tone the whole way through. There was no moments where it was just like them sitting around subtly singing. That does not exist in this movie musical. It is always something more that's going on. And I think if they tried to do anything less, it would have felt wrong and that it didn't belong in the movie.
My like reference point for this, it's like if Hair met Moulin Rouge met American Idiot, which came out after, but the military stuff is really, well, Hair has that as well, but there was especially that scene, the draft scene reminds me of American Idiot, or the scene in the hospital reminds me of American Idiot. So that's kind of what I would put together with it. It's also interesting because when I first heard of Girl from the North Country, what I pictured was something like Across the Universe. And it obviously was not that. It was, Girl from the North Country is very serious.
They chose a tone and they stuck to it.
Yes. The one thing maybe is that they perform these songs and they don't necessarily correlate exactly to what's happening in the scene. But I found it like very kind of like dingy feeling. Girl from the North Country, and I never felt that way about Across the Universe. Across the Universe felt very vibrant, which is, in tune with the Beatles' aesthetics, whereas I guess Girl from the North Country is very in tune with Bob Dylan's aesthetics, which was very like, well, I don't know.
I mean, yes, that musical was very like dark, and I mean that in all of the sense of the word. Like, the theater was dark, the costumes were dark, the storyline, kind of dark. It was just like, I don't know. When we had read those reviews from Off-Broadway, I was excited to see it. Sitting in that theater, I was like, what am I doing here?
It was very, like, muted. Everything was muted, like, through a filter of darkness, of shadow, and, like, not in an enjoyable way for me. But yeah, like, when I heard it, like, I was excited. I was like, oh, if it's Across the Universe, an original story where they used one artist's music to tell this kind of, like, it's not exactly the same time period, but it's the period piece. And instead it was just, I don't know, whatever it was.
You know what they were missing? Julie Taymor.
Julie Taymor would never have let this happen. Connor McPherson wishes he was Julie Taymor.
My brother was asking why Across the Universe was never musicalized for stage, and I assumed it had something to do with all of the Beatles songs, because I remember when we were looking into Moulin Rouge, obviously All You Need Is Love is part of the Elephant Love medley in the movie, but it did not get licensed for the musical, and I assume it's sort of under the same umbrella of why it didn't happen.
It's very expensive.
If, like, Paul McCartney was to be, like, an executive producer on a project, would something happen for stage? But I don't even know that the Beatles own their own material.
I don't think they do own their own material anymore. I think it's belongs somewhere else. I was reading about the Lennon musical, which was on Broadway in 2005 and flopped, but they weren't allowed or chose not to. I think this was kind of like a Yoko Ono influence decision, but they couldn't use any of the Lennon-McCartney catalog. They could only use stuff solely written by John Lennon, which I was like, oh, interesting. So obviously you get, like, good stuff, but none of that kind of early Beatles stuff. So I do think it does probably have to do with licensing.
Yeah, and I also think, though, if it were to be staged for a musical, I agree Moulin Rouge is the correct musical to compare it to. It would be very over-the-top, great big sets. I mean, obviously we could compare it to Spider-Man, because I assume Julie would also direct a musical version of this movie. But, yeah, I think, to me, as someone, again, that has seen Spider-Man twice, I have also seen The Lion King, and now Across the Universe for, like, the second time or third time. I see, like, parallels in her style. I think, obviously, like, grandeur, over the top, kind of, like, out there, like, sign Julie Taymor all over that. But I think, and again, this is something that you had said off the mic, like, her best work is stuff that she creates creatively instead of, like, writes. Her style is just, like, interesting. And I want to read a quote from a PBS article that came out, like, many, many years ago. And it says that Julie Taymor is one of the most experimental of theatrical directors and designers whose fusion of folklore, puppetry, and intellectually demanding themes made her a favorite of those with taste for cutting edge. And then she is also compared to legends such as Bob Fosse, Michael Bennett, and Harold Prince. And when you read that, and then you see, like, the disaster of disasters in 10 of Spider-Man, 11, it's like, what happened here?
It's true. I do think she has, like, such a gorgeous visual style, but I don't know if she has the, like, full package. Like, I don't know if her strength, like, the story is where we run into trouble, and I think that's where Spider-Man ran into trouble. Like, no one can say the visuals in Spider-Man weren't amazing and gorgeous, but stringing them together with words and narrative was where it kind of, and music, but was where it kind of, like, fell off the deep end a little bit. And Across the Universe, gorgeous. Like, the visuals in this movie, amazing.
I mean, some of them very bizarre, but yes.
Sure. But they were always trying something. I mean, you spoke about the I Want You scene with, like, Uncle Sam reaching through the poster, and then you have the character of Max kind of be, like, stripped while they're assessing him with the, like, army guys with their, like, chins and
G.I.
faces.
Joe.
Yes, like, they're all, like, so homogenous looking. And then when they're kind of, like, doing the duets with the two of them, that was kind of, this also came out after, but in Billy Elliot, where the kind of, like, officers and dancers are dancing together, like, that kind of duet.
This was obviously more animated than that, but in that same song, like when they're going through all of the health checks of all of these guys and like different doors are opening and you see a foot or like an arm, I was like, this is cool stuff. Like,
yeah,
I think that sequence might be the best.
So the cubicles dropped over them. That was so cool. And I was watching the special features of it, and I was like, oh, that was a practical effect. For some reason, I thought it was VFX. But they actually had those cubicles, and they actually had to be in the exact right spot, even when the ground had, like, treadmills on it.
Right.
For it to come down exactly over them. So good.
And again, I feel like that makes sense for Julie specifically, for those sets to be that practical because of all of the practical stuff that she had done on stage. It's like, yes, let's bring this into the movie world as well, because I don't know, like, maybe CGI is not the correct thing to do here. They really want to, like, put the actors in that world and make them immersed in it.
Honestly, anytime there was a little bit of VFX or animation, that's kind of when I was like, oh, I don't know if I love this. Was it I Am the Walrus, where they're in kind of like a circle? Yes, Bono is singing I Am the Walrus. We're in like a trip. Prudence is like roller skating around him.
Yeah,
they're in like an animated circus, and I was like, okay, I understand we're doing animating a hallucination, but I don't know if I am on board with what's happening here.
I just want to point out that I think for a good, like, I want to say 25 minutes, they're high in that movie. And I was like, they have been high for so long.
The way they played with colors in that scene to tell us they're not thinking or seeing clearly right now, so you're not either.
Yes, which is so funny to me because, again, I think that the LSD scenes are, like, one of the best parts of that movie. But then something that you had texted me yesterday, when they're singing, what is the song that they're singing?
Is it Mr. Kite?
No. At the very beginning, when they're passing around the joint, I'm like, this is so, like, they're not high here at all.
Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. Yes. So I was reading the trivia of this movie. They didn't show them having an actual joint for rating reasons, so they're passing around a fake joint. Like, they're just pretending.
And guess what, guys? You could tell that they were passing nothing.
It was like silly.
It was very, like, very small. And yeah, silly. It was silly. But that scene was, like, very fun. The guys were, like, having a great time. They had these cool, like, almost aerial camera shots of the ceiling. And, like, I just wonder how many cameras were also working on this movie, because there's so many different camera angles. I don't know. It was, like... Again, if you have not seen this, I think you should watch it. And something interesting to me is this was choreographed by Daniel Ezralo, who we are not familiar with, but obviously looked him up and was like, oh, of course he choreographed Spider-Man. But he also did Beatles' Love, the Cirque show. And I think that the Cirque choreography is very prevalent in this movie. I also think it's very prevalent in Spider-Man, like inspired by Cirque stuff. I've never seen a Cirque show. My parents saw Love and they loved it. And I think that style, obviously Julie Taymor is a fan of that. She wouldn't continue to work with someone if she didn't like that. So it is interesting to bring like Cirque aspects into this. I think Love opened before Across the Universe, so that's probably where she saw him.
Or she found him. I don't know, like, I thought the choreography was great. So, talking about I Want You, the choreography in that, fantastic. The choreography in Come Together, the different worlds.
The vocalizations in Come Together is where it's at.
It starts with, like, hippies, but then it goes into the, like, men in suits, and they're all passing each other and walking each other, and then back kind of to, like, nightclub, hippie, hooker.
But it's so, like, grungy and dirty sounding, and, like... It's so good. The vocalizations are so good.
There was actually a great special feature about, I think it was Moving Across the Universe, which was about the choreography. And he said something really interesting that, I don't know if I thought this way before, but they're trying to represent the 60s and the movement style of the 60s, but the dancers that you have to work with have like modern technique and modern style. So it's about translating that style through the modern technique and the modern body and modern dance. And I think he was, like, really successful in doing that, just in the way that the movement felt spontaneous yet sharp. So good.
Yeah, I also think that he played a lot with, like, different dance styles throughout, depending on what kind of a scene was happening. So again, like, the army stuff was very, like, not robotic, but
like rigid, very sharp,
rigid. Yeah. Whereas, like, them dancing at the end for, like, All You Need Is Love is, like, very hippie, whimsical, whatever. So they understood the assignment.
Yes, even that first song, I think you can see the kind comparison between it's, what is it? Hold Me Tight, or is it All My Lovin'? I don't know. There, where you're flashing between the prom and the nightclub.
Oh, yeah.
So you're seeing Lucy and Jude, and the way that they're dancing to the same song is completely different to represent the completely different worlds that they're living in. So good. Like a really great just visual representation. So much of the movie is told straight up just through visuals and not through words, or even sometimes the music is more about the vibe that it's giving and not about the actual lyrics that they're saying.
Yeah. I do think, though, in general, throughout the entire movie, it is quite confusing to understand what is going on. They move so quickly around. And also, at one point when, like... So, spoiler for Across the Universe, but Lucy's boyfriend, Daniel, I feel like is his name. It's Spencer Liv. That's who it is. Dies at war in Vietnam. And then Jude and Max have already moved to New York at this time. And then Lucy, like, makes her way to New York. And then I feel like literally the next scene, they're expressing their love for each other. I'm like, we moved really fast here. Like, he hasn't been dead for 2 days.
Well, she goes to New York and they go bowling in what is probably my favorite song of the whole thing. Like, I've just seen a face where they're just like sliding on the bowling alleys.
Yeah.
It's so fun. It's so good. And that's when he falls in love. He's like, I've just seen a face. I know
that he falls in love, and yes, he also has a girlfriend back home, but like, we don't talk about her.
Well,
but
that's
her boyfriend. Her boyfriend literally died 2 days ago, and she's like in his bed the next day.
It's fine. Well, it's like Jude and Max are driving, and Max is like, she's got a boyfriend, and he's like, that's okay, I've got a girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. And then also the like other sort of side storyline is all about like Prudence and her, I don't know, she's like in love with the cheerleader at her school when she sings I Want to Hold Your Hand, which TV Carpio gives an amazing performance of I Want to Hold Your Hand. What a voice. And then we end up seeing her like days later show up in New York, and she falls for...
Sadie?
I don't even know that. Sadie.
Yeah.
Sadie is her name. And then realizes that, like, Sadie's not available because she's in love with somebody else. And I'm like, we tried this side storyline here for Prudence, but we really did not develop it. And I feel like, why did we have it?
Yes. So this is the struggle of this movie, right? We have the main love story. I get the Lucy and Jude stuff, fairly easy to follow along with. And even the Max stuff, good.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That easy to follow along with. But anytime Prudence came on, I was like... okay, I don't know where we're going with this. And then there's also like kind of like the Sadie JoJo story, which also was kind of like, I don't know if this one was fully developed either. Though anytime they were singing, I was like, yes, keep singing. Both of your voices are amazing. But I don't know if that side story was fully developed either. Yeah,
so that sort of like plot points like those, I'm like, well, I don't know if we needed this because it made the movie more confusing, and maybe... But then again, a lot of the Prudence songs and scenes have some of those like really creative musical numbers to go along with them. So you lose that if you lose her. I don't know. I do think that this movie needed to be further developed, and I would say that that's probably maybe one of the main critic reviews and why it was so mixed. This movie only a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is not critically acclaimed. However, as we said at the beginning of this episode, they tried something and they stuck with it. And like, as our most recent episode on flops, which was all about us talking about people trying something, like they went through with this. And I do think that it's a movie that when it came out, a lot of people saw it, and whether you liked it or not, it was still entertainment. And I think that that's something that has stuck with Julie all the way through, is that her shows provide entertainment, whether good or bad.
Yeah, other things that were weird about this movie. Sometimes a song was so abstractly used to tell the story, and sometimes it was so literal used to tell the story. And I was like, decide. So it's like the most literal moment is when Jude sings Revolution, when he goes into I was like, I don't know if I needed this part where they're like pulling him out of the office, and the lyrics are used exactly what they mean versus I don't know, being something. I don't know if we needed that song, but except also this whole movie is about a revolution, so how can you not have that song? But it was just such a literal moment, and I felt anytime they were going too literal was when it was weak, whereas whenever they were, I don't know, playing with, I don't know, something like Strawberry Fields, where you're seeing like Jude creating his art for the record studio and Max like in Vietnam, and it was just kind of more of like a mood representation of where they were both in at the emotional point they were both at in their lives. Like that was a more successful use of music than I think when the lyrics matched exactly to what the character was feeling at that time.
It's also interesting, too, when you think about the end of this movie and they end on All You Need Is Love as the final song.
How else?
Well, but I agree, how else? But for a film that was so over the top all the way through, to just have them sing on a rooftop felt like almost underwhelming. I was like, why didn't we end this on a super high note of like, I don't know, visuals of freaking hearts? Like, they could have done that.
Yeah, like it's true, they'd gone like so extra the entire movie, and then you have them sing All You Need Is Love on a roof, and it was a big, like a lot of people were there, but where was the giant production? Maybe that was the point, like they wanted it to be more simple in that moment, like you don't need all these other things, all you need is love. Maybe, but it was like, you know, it's, you think you're, I don't know, that was what's exciting about the movie, the kind of extra crazy things that were happening. And so in that last moment, like a very, very simple thing felt underwhelming.
Something, too, that I think we can sort of very loosely compare this to In the Heights and their sort of like dream sequences. Obviously, In the Heights chose to do very few throughout the entire movie. We're talking about the bolts of fabric, the animation productions that we hated, like dancing on the wall. I think because In the Heights only did those for certain songs, that stuff didn't work for me as much as this, where it literally was over the top the entire time. Yeah.
The entire, even when it was just people dancing, it was heightened.
Yes, exactly. So again, I feel like that's maybe why I felt almost let down in that finale. But then I also thought about it and I was like, were we in a dream sequence the entire time and that was the only thing that was real?
Maybe that's the interpretation.
Maybe that's why it had like no bells and whistles attached to it, because we have exited the dream.
This was real. Yeah. So sometimes, like, obviously there were some songs that were like diegetic to the storyline when like Sadie is performing and Jojo is performing, but I don't think they were really singing I Just Seen a Face in a Bowling Alley. So it's funny when you mix characters who are singing and the other characters know they're singing versus characters who are singing and the other characters don't know they're singing.
Yeah.
Which this movie did.
Right, exactly. And I also think that every song almost felt like its own individual, like, vignette, which is kind of different to other movie musicals, I would say.
Yes, I agree. Each one had, like, its own visual style, its own, like, little storyline, and then there's, like, a little scene, and then you're like, okay, next chapter. I very much agree with that.
Which is also, again, I fully think that the reason this never made it to stage is because of the licensing, but something like that would be very difficult to do on stage, to have like mini vignettes. It doesn't really work as much, I don't think. I don't know.
Yeah, transitions are hard on stage, you know?
And there's so many different transitions in this movie. I do think it would be cool. I've said this many times whenever I think something is cool, that it would be like a Vegas show. Like, it would work there.
Sure. And you shorten it and you have people like flying across the ceiling and you just go nuts.
However, they would be competing with the Cirque show and they don't need to do that.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, like we don't need another Beatles show. I feel like we've always kind of struggled to adapt. I feel like people have always been looking to adapt Beatles music into a musical, a movie, a something. And I think it's hard because their style changed kind of so drastically over 10 years, I feel anyway. Like from kind of like more poppier in the beginning to just going like much rockier by the end. So and the way that the music rights work. And yeah, you come to a point where it kind of does become very literal, which it did in this movie. And I just think they're a tough one to adapt, just them.
There is a second Beatles movie musical. I have not seen it. I don't know if you have. Have you seen Yesterday?
No, I did not see Yesterday. My parents did see it, though.
My parents have also seen Yesterday, and they actually really enjoyed it. So it is, but see, that one's a bit different.
Sure.
Also, that storyline is like kind of crazy.
I wouldn't quite call that a musical, though.
No, it's just like a movie that sings Beatles songs is really what it is. But you also think about, again, like Love obviously exists. There's so many like Beatles impersonation shows that are out there. We get Rain like every 3 years in Toronto.
That's true. I forgot about Rain.
These are like, I don't think there will ever be a time in our lifetime where Beatles music isn't going to be popular and people want to see a show or movie about it. So I'm sure way down the line there'll be way more iterations using Beatles songs.
For sure. Especially as, I don't know, maybe the licensing rights open up a little bit more. I don't even know where the catalog is at the moment. And maybe once, let's say, Yoko Ono is no longer influencing what is done with like John's music and stuff, it will, like, stuff will open up, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But the further away we get from when they were actually creating music, the more options there will be for adaptation and use.
She did see this movie. She did approve of it. So did Paul. So
did Ringo. I think they all, well, the alive ones saw it.
Yeah. What are your overall thoughts of Across the Universe?
Like, I would recommend this movie to everyone. I love it. I think there are like weird parts and parts I'm just like, I don't know if I needed that, or if I cringe maybe at this, but I love it, you know?
Interesting. See, I don't love it. I think that it's good, and I think there are moments that are amazing. I knew when I rewatched it, I was like, this is a Steph movie. Like, she's gonna love this movie. But I do appreciate what they went for on the creativity, because they don't do stuff like that anymore. So literally, stuff like this happens all the time now with like CGI and animation and whatever. Sure. But to do it this way, and even as you said to me yesterday when you were watching the special features, like, allegedly they sang all of these songs live, which I was shocked to hear.
I know, that didn't come across in the movie to me at all. I felt that they were very much not singing live watching it. So that was kind of interesting.
And, you know, like Salma Hayek showing up in a nurse outfit multiplied by like 25. Like, that stuff will never happen again.
Before we watched it, you were like, I remember the I Want You, and I was like, I remember the nurse. Like, that's like the most vivid memory for me, the nurse. You're like, do you remember who plays the nurse? I was like, I do remember who plays the nurse.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, like, I think I like it even more for its imperfections. Like, I like it even more for the stuff that doesn't work about it than even for the stuff that does work. Like, watching the special features, Julie Taymor got so excited. They were talking about I Want You, and they're like, then they sing, like, it goes into She's So Heavy. And I was like, well, how do I do that? What do I do that? You know what's so heavy? The Statue of Liberty. And they're carrying that. And I was like, Julie, that's like a little bit too much. But I was like, also, I'm obsessed. Like, yes, they're walking through these like tiny palm trees in Vietnam, carrying the Statue of Liberty, singing She's So Heavy. That's bizarre. It's wild. Yeah. And I'm like, who else would do that? You know?
I know.
Who else would make these choices like that? And even so, it's kind of like, I don't know if I think that's great or not, but I think it's great that it's there, because I think it's like the stuff that's weird or questionable is what makes it interesting or cool or fun.
I mean, this is also not the first movie that she's directed. I have not seen any of the other movies that she's done, but I believe she did a version of The Tempest that had like kind of mixed reviews also. I just think with
that
all
was
of
also
her projects,
Spider-Man time, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was very busy within those few years, I feel. And Shakespeare is cool for her to do, though. I feel like that is also like a lot of dream sequences, a lot of like kind of experimental out there things, because it's just text that we have nothing to reference off of except for the text. So it's really like, do what you want. Yes,
like, and she doesn't have to create the story. She is given the story, and she gets to create the world for the story to exist in. Yeah. And she gets just focused purely on visuals and movement. And the story is there. It is like, we have established Shakespeare writes amazing stories, so you don't have to worry about whether the plot works, the characters work. You just get to play with the movement, the visuals, the like interpretation. And I think that's her strength, is interpreting someone else's story. She even directed Frida, which starred Salma Hayek, which makes sense because Salma Hayek shows up in here.
She likes to work with the same people, which we'll get into when we get into Spider-Man. I was like blown away by the names that had like popped up in this movie. I couldn't believe it. But speaking of like what she's best of, doing movements, all this creativity, let's talk a bit about The Lion King. Yes, we are moving back in time now.
Yeah.
Obviously, Julie Taymor won Best Director for this musical. So this was a time period that everyone was eating up what Julie was putting on stage. And I do think, again, as someone that is not a huge fan of the stage production of The Lion King, to me, the best parts are the puppets. And that's obviously her strength. Like, she is very good at puppet play, shadow play, like all of that different stuff. Obviously, like the costumes and everything, which, again, Lion King won costume for the Tonys that year as well. And just, like, using her influences, which I had read that she had spent many years in Indonesia and Sri Lanka, and she's very influenced by Asian culture. And you can see that, I think, in all of her work, whether it's Across the Universe or Spider-Man and Lion King. She obviously has an inspiration that she sticks to. And I don't think the reason that I didn't like The Lion King has anything to do with her.
Right. I've never seen The Lion King on stage, but I have seen many, many videos of The Circle of Life. And that is like the thing that everyone talks about when they come from The Lion King. The Circle of Life. You're sitting in your seats. The animals are coming from everywhere. There's elephants. There's, birds. The birds, like, that they're swinging around.
Birds are the best part. Yeah.
Like, that grandness is what she creates. And as another thing, it's not so literal, right? It's not like someone in an elephant suit. It is a puppet. It is a representation. Imagine if it was just like a straight up, not even a straight up elephant, but like they didn't try and make it super realistic. It is a representation and interpretation of a puppet, that of an elephant. So you understand that it's an elephant, but because it's theater and there's a suspension of disbelief, it also like it nods its head to it being based in animation. And I think like the visual styles that she combined by doing that, like, were really successful.
I also believe that Lion King was like, this was obviously her first Broadway show, and to be handed such a large property like The Lion King, which is such a beloved project, has like everyone has seen that movie, to be handed that and be like, run with it, do what you want, is really interesting. And like you said, with the way that it's not so literal of an elephant, I think of like the headpieces that they wear that have like the lion ears and like almost drawings. It's very, if anyone remembers, I think it's at the beginning of The Lion King when like Rafiki is drawing on the rocks and it's that sort of outline of Simba. They took that outline and they ran with it, and they did all of these like wood pieces. There are moments of The Lion King that I actually think are like fantastic. Again, overall, like not my favorite show I've ever seen.
Sure.
But what they tried has never been done again. There have been no puppets like that in a theater since 1997.
The closest comparison I can make is War Horse with the horses. The way that they're not, I think it might be the same puppet team even, but the way that they're not, literal horses, a man in the front of a suit and a man in the back, but like the way that they are wired. You can see the skeleton, you can see the puppeteers. I love when you can see the puppeteers. I love when you can see the mechanism of them working. I think that's something you can only do on stage. It's like a perfect way of using theater and stage to tell the story. But
what's interesting at the same time is for a project that she did that was not super literal, let's jump ahead all of the years and go into Spider-Man, and the Green Goblin costume like couldn't be more in your face if you tried.
That is a theme park costume.
However, if you look at the Arachne costume, it's a woman that has like spider legs. Yes, that's what we're going to call them. I'm literally like projecting my spider legs. But it doesn't feel as literal to me as like the Green Goblin. Now, I do think again, I've seen Spider-Man twice. I have seen 2.0 twice. Now, there are many, many an article, and I will put in our description for YouTube listeners. There is the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark Archives YouTube channel that has many, many clips of every iteration of Spider-Man. It is like a trip to watch it all the way through.
Have you ever listened to the audio of the first ever preview?
Of course I have.
Because I have.
And me like going through, because I know that there was also a blog post about it and I couldn't find it, but I was like going through like the about and the discussion or whatever. On the discussion page on YouTube, someone was like, if you are looking for more clips, like please DM me. Who do I see in the comment section? I literally like copy and pasted it. It says, hey, MJT here from Spidey.
Who is it?
I mean, he was in Spider-Man. We know him very well.
Matthew James Thomas, like under like alternate Spider-Man. I was like, wait.
It says, hey, MJT here from Spidey. These videos are great. I'm wondering if you have any more. Is there a way I can contact you? Literally, Matthew James Thomas asking for bootlegs of himself. Like, obsessed.
Me too.
So, obviously, I think there was 3 versions of Spider-Man. 1.0, I think 1.5, and then 2, which was like 2 was the one that I saw twice.
Sure. They shut down for a bit, reteched to put in 2.0, but like 1.0 changed over time.
And like, to be honest, is this show great? No, it's not. Is it like, what did it try everything possible? 100%. And I think the stuff that they tried, some of it was actually like phenomenal. And I think about it to this day. I will never forget the opening of that musical where Ariadne is like, or whatever her name is in, I don't even know. She's hanging from the ceiling. This was literally like Cirque du Soleil, if I could picture Cirque du Soleil.
On the silks, and then the silks keep coming up and they're weaving away.
I can't, like, I couldn't believe what I was watching the first time. It's this gold, beautiful, thick silk. These girls are like aerial swinging all the way through it. I was like, where are we right now?
That is described in the book, The Song of Spider-Man. Glenn Berger watching that for the first time and saying this, like, describing how magical, how insane, how crazy it was to just see that and to be like, wow, we have a show. Like, seeing that, it's like, we have something here.
Right.
And like, maybe that was all they had, but they had something.
Well, to open your musical with that is like really setting your standards like super, super high. But I saw the show for the first time in 2012 and I like vividly remember every single part of that scene. It was so incredible. Obviously, like the flying stuff is everything. Like you're never...
Nothing like that had been done before.
And it will never be done again, for good reason, obviously. But like,
not never done again. But you know, it will take a long time before. I mean, not to spoil Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, but stuff does fly around the theater in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Right, and I've heard, and again, we will not spoil it. I know that like the Dementor stuff is insane what happens there, but like
that was never full body chills when that happened, when I saw it.
You'll never see a man dressed in theme park Green Goblin on a glider fighting Spider-Man in the sky. Like, to even say that out loud is outrageous.
No, it's crazy. It's truly crazy. Why they did this, no one will ever know.
I mean, they were trying something, right?
Yes, no, I know. I wonder if we should be trying more superhero or more comic book-based stuff on stage. I don't know.
Yeah, I obviously, like, Spider-Man had 182 previews, which is a record. A show has never hit that many previews before, ever. Julie was fired from the production. Yeah. I think, again, if you go into the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark archives and listen to some of those songs from 1.0, which she randomly like co-wrote some of the songs, it shows. It really shows. And she should have never written those songs. Obviously they were all cut during that process, but I don't know. I always
think a freak like me needs company. But she wanted to be a freak like me needs family, okay?
The villain fashion show in that musical, those costumes, though, like, so literal, and I don't understand why they went so literal. Again, comparing it to The Lion King, like, every single costume was so literal. Spider-Man I'm fine with, because that is the costume. Sure. There's nothing else you can do with that. Yeah. But, like, Green Goblin, Patrick Page, like, had to sit through and have this, like, I wonder how much that weighed, the thing that was on his face. Plus the whole, like, suit of armor.
This is what Spider-Man struggled with, I think, and its tone. They didn't get the tone right. Because the Spider-Man comics, and when the movies have been more successful, is they have a light tone to them. Like, they don't take themselves
almost
seriously.
Comedy.
Yes, it's comedy. They're joking with themselves. Spider-Man is funny. Like, he's a funny young guy. And this musical took itself so seriously. Even when it was, like, trying to be light. Like, I call it, and Riverdale is new, but, like, the Riverdale-ification of it, because Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa came on and, like, Riverdale'd it up. And I think you can tell, like, that sensibility. Though it wasn't being successful before it was Riverdale, not really either. So I don't know what the fix was, but something else in the book that I think was kind of interesting is when they were first talking about how Spider-Man was going to fly, and they're like, okay, we're going to need time to, like, hook him up. Everyone's going to see the wires. Like, what are we going to do? And Julie had an idea that I think was great. It's like, well, what if we play into everyone seeing the wires? What if Peter says, hook me up, and you see him being hooked up before he starts flying? And I'm like, oh, that's cool that you, like, bring the audience in. You break the fourth wall. And then the book writer was like, yeah, everyone forgot about that by the time we actually went to do it. And so it became kind of, like, cheesy. And I was like, that might have been enough to make it a little more, like, to match the tone correctly, to bring the audience in, to make them feel like they were a part of it versus make them not. And then also all people almost dying. That was, like, another...
Well, yes. We'll get to the injuries in a second. But I think
another thing.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying, and I never thought about it that way before, because if you do watch any iteration of the Spider-Man movies, there's obviously been, like, 3 separate now versions of Spider-Man. We've got the Tobey Maguire one, we've got the Andrew Garfield one, and now we have the Tom Holland. But every time, Peter Parker is the same character. He is always, like, nerdy, but also cracks these jokes, and Spider-Man is always, like, almost talking to the audience. So you're right. Why did they not do that? That would have made way more sense.
It was such an interesting thing that they talked about, that they thought about, that they're like, oh, it'll be fun to break the fourth wall in that way, be like, hook me up, or pass me, whatever. And because when you're on stage, you're going to see the wires, you're going to see them, but to kind of, like, get around it, and also, like, reference it.
Yes, for sure. And also, like, seeing that show and seeing the wires, like, I'm not bothered by that. How else are they going to fly?
No, but I think by adding, like, a comedic element to the flying, like, like, that was one of the most interesting things from the book, is that they, like, had that idea and then completely forgot about it by the time they went to actually do the show. It's
also interesting, too, when you think of Spider-Man, because, like, in comparison to other superheroes, no one else really does that except for him. So he's special in that way that he does. Yes, and also that he has that connection with the audience. Everybody else is kind of like, who is this Spider-Man kid? He's always, like, joked about. So, yeah, I agree. Like, why not take that and run with it? I always think, my friend Cam saw Spider-Man, hated it, but he always talks about the fact, and to me I was like, this is hilarious, there wasn't a stoppage, but there was, like, an extended bit of time. The show didn't stop, but there was an issue, and the Spider-Men, because there's many of them, swing around the Foxwood Theater and land on different balcony sort of sections, and he was sitting in the mezzanine, and a Spider-Man landed there, and because there was, like, an extended stoppage, even though the show didn't stop, he started cracking jokes. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, why did you hate this? Like, it was in the dark, which makes it even better because you don't even know what's happening. And it was stuff that was like, how you guys liking the show? Like, he literally broke the fourth wall. And to think of that
is Spider-Man to me. Like, that's, like, the character of him.
I agree. And I never thought about that before. And I think that's such an interesting, you know what? Let's call up Julie. Maybe we can revive.
Julie, what are you doing? Okay. Now that I've been in her mind as Julie Taymor, I was not the murderer.
I was.
You were the murderer. You were, who are you?
Idina Mental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, in her mind, I like want to get more into it. I want to get deeper into the way her mind works.
Yeah. Obviously, there was other issues than just the book. We've touched on the injuries on a few episodes now, but just to get into the injuries a little bit, I think you had said in our last episode about the broken wrists one.
That one is the wildest one because it happened in front of the press. Like they'd invited the press to, like, show off the show, and their stunt guy breaks both wrists. Like, horrifying.
Was the press in the theater?
Yes, they brought them to the theater because they couldn't really rehearse in a room.
No, you can't do those like random Broadway.com vlogs where they're like rehearsing in a rehearsal room.
So I haven't read this book in over a year, but I'm like, I think this is coming back to me. They brought the press into the theater to show off some of the tricks, some of the stunts to get people excited. Okay, there's a moment, there's a building. So the way the set worked, it was like comic book style where the buildings were like in, and there was one that would like rise from the stage.
Yes. And side note, the set's stunning.
Great.
Like actually
tonally
stunning.
Correct. Tonally,
yes.
They got it.
Yeah.
So there was like a building that would like rise up from the stage and become a ramp. So one of the Spider-Men would, I think, come from the top, jump, maybe do a flip and like fly and like land at the bottom.
Oh, you know what? I think this does still happen. I think it
probably does. I think there's like a timing thing to it now that like makes it safer. Like he doesn't fly until a certain point, whatever.
Yeah.
But the timing was off, and so the like building was too high. I think it wasn't far down enough when he landed, so it was closer than it was supposed to be. And so when he landed on his hands, you know, the stance like broke both his wrists landing in front of everybody. Okay.
So I heard that this happened again, not the wrist breaking.
Sure.
Another person did the same stunt on the same trick and broke both of their feet.
No. I can't think about it. It's
the most iconic one, and it's not iconic because he actually got like very injured,
really
but the
bad.
most iconic one is Chris Tierney, who was in Across the Universe as a dancer.
Yes.
There is a scene when Mary Jane is being captured by the Green Goblin. She's like tied up on a rope, and there's sort of like a trapdoor in the stage, and she slowly, which is correct, descends down. Spider-Man jumps as he would in the movie to grab her, to save her. And they're supposed to like come down together. Obviously not hooked into his costume, jumps from 21 feet and lands in the orchestra pit. And they, I think, canceled the show that night.
I think they did stop it. Well, the thing that happened...
But that video was on YouTube. Like, TMZ
horrifying.
Had that video.
Yes. I remember seeing it on TMZ. The thing is, the audience thought it was part of the show. So we're like, this is totally normal.
Everyone's like clapping as
this is great. No, someone like almost died right just in front of you. Horrifying.
The most shocking thing to me, though, is that he obviously rushed to the hospital right after that happened. He was out of the show for an extended period of time, but then came back. Like,
that's commitment. That's love. That's passion for the stunt work. I was going to say, Tara, talk about what you love about Spider-Man. Talk about a song.
I mean, okay, so obviously I said this on our last episode. I think that the New York debut, which is Spider-Man's like debut to the audience, is amazing. It is sort of that trick that you're talking about where like the stage comes down, but it's a little bit different. He like I believe it's either at the very beginning of Act 2 or the end of Act 1. He's hooked and there's multiple swinging back and forth. And the swinging stuff also great because here's the thing, what you were saying about like the wires, he uses a web. Like, use that to your advantage. We have to see it anyway. So, like, just use it. It makes no sense that you're trying to hide this. Like, we have to see the web. So he's swinging on the web, like, back and forth, obviously, like, around the entire theater. And then this song starts, and I think it's, like, a really good guitar riff. I think, actually, the orchestrations are, like, quite good on some of the songs. And the comic book sort of set, like, comes up. I believe it's the Empire State Building. And Spider-Man like leaps from the back of the stage and lands at the front row of the audience, and it is so exciting. It's like it's so exciting. But stuff that I love from this musical, any of the songs that Peter Parker and Mary Jane sing together, whether it's No More or Just Can't Walk Away, I think it's so good. I have obviously talked about how much I love Reeve Carney's voice on previous episodes. It's so interesting that he is the person that's in this, because to me he is like not a Peter Parker at all. Like, this man is so serious and so like indie. I don't even know how to describe Reeve, but not this, like not Peter Parker. But I think that his rocky tone obviously fit for the U2 score. I will also never forget, in a scene in Spider-Man, they go to like the club, which I don't think is in the movie, but Spider-Man and Mary Jane go to a club with like Flash. I think that's his name, the bully, whatever his name is. And they're dancing to, like, Hello from U2. Like, hello, hello. Whatever that song is called. Vertigo, yeah. It's like, okay, so this is happening right now. But, I don't know. To me, the best part is, like, the final battle scene. Like, I will never see anything like that again, and I feel privileged to have been able to see that twice. I realized today that the second time I saw Spider-Man, which was with my brothers, we saw that December 2013, and I just realized today that show closed January 4th, 2014. So I saw like one of the final shows.
Right near the end, right at the end.
James Matthew Sargent? Is that
Justin Matthew Sargent?
Justin, yes. Sargent? Because Matthew James Thomas was in Pippin, which I had also seen that trip. So he left. And obviously, like, Reeve was long gone. And I don't know if Patrick Page was in it. I really don't remember. But I don't know. I think that, like, there are many things obviously wrong with it. But again, they really, really tried something. And I think that because of the, like, extreme failure of this musical, people have sort of been afraid to try anything else again.
You know, at this high a budget, yeah, I think people are very hesitant, which is maybe correct. Like, to get that much of a return on a theater venture is very, very, very rare. And I don't know if a big budget thing like that, like the closest thing currently is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And I don't necessarily know if it's paid off for them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it. Also, that's an interesting property to discuss whenever we do get to see it, because allegedly it is being shortened for Broadway. So
retooled is what they keep saying, which makes me think like put into one show versus two parts.
And it's one
I hope when it comes to Toronto, it's two parts, because I want you to see two parts.
Hello, Editing Tara from the future here. I've popped in as we have some info that we need to address. Since recording this episode, the next day, the news came out about the revamped Harry Potter and the Cursed Child production. And as Steph predicted, the rumors were true, and the North American version of the show will now be one part instead of two. We have also learned that we will see that Cursed Child magic right here in Toronto in May of 2022. We cannot wait to see the production. Now back to the episode. I actually don't know. We don't know the reason that they're doing it. I think it's reopened again in London and possibly Australia. So I think it's two parts currently. Also playing at the where Spider-Man played. So you know,
it's the Lyric now is the Foxwoods then. Yeah. But it's one of those things where like it's a huge budget show, two parts, like 4 acts. Based on a very well-known property.
Right.
And from what it seems like, it's still running in the West End. Like, I saw the year 2 cast. I think they're on year 4, year 5. I don't know. But I don't think they were selling out on Broadway.
No.
I think it was fairly easily available on TKTS. I think the ticket prices were going down. So I'm curious to see how successful it was in New York. I don't think it really hit the way it hit in London.
I want to say when we were there in December, not that we had time to see this show because we didn't.
That's a commitment. Like you plan to see that. That's not a spontaneous decision. Is the thing.
But I think we were like looking at the boards, and I swear we could have found tickets to one of the parts for like $80, which is unheard of in London at least. So, but they did just open, I believe, a Harry Potter like themed store in Times Square, and I wonder if that would help. Because obviously, like, there's so many things in London, and you can go to the platform. Like, it is interesting. Not that I don't know, because we haven't been in New York, like what the the merch like shop situation is like for Cursed Child. But if this new like Harry Potter themed gift shop is near the theater, it might actually help it.
Can I tell you what the gift shop thing was in London when I saw it? In your program, or everyone got, even if you didn't buy a program, you got a little catalog sheet where you could place your order for whatever you wanted to buy. So you didn't even have to go to this thing. You could give it to someone and pay, and it would be like delivered to you.
I mean, London doesn't give free playbills.
You're right. I had to buy it. I did buy it. I have no problem like dropping. $10
I would buy it every time
for it. Yeah. You know, I bought the Hamilton one. Like I have my. I have all of them.
Do you know what I bought?
What did you buy? Show me. Get it out. No.
Signed by Patrick Page and Reeve Carney.
Wow. Did you buy it signed, or did you? Did you
No, are you
stage
kidding?
door?
I stage door this
You
musical
stage
to
door?
tell Reeve Carney how much I loved his voice.
Wow,
obviously.
like they don't always come out. You know, I was curious.
But
how
like,
much do you think you get for it?
actually, while we're here, story time.
Yes, story time. Show and tell.
So if you, this is really exclusive for YouTube viewers, so sorry to anyone listening audio only, but you can see the comic book stuff here is like super cool. The desks and
cool.
everything, awesome. They did go very literal sometimes with the like pow and bam stuff that happened, which is like kind of Spider-Man. Oh, this is another scene I loved, and we said this when Jake Epstein was on, bouncing off the walls. I think what they did here, so smart. He was
With
obviously
the walls like coming in and expanding out. That's
it's the
cool.
first, when Spider-Man like gets bit and all of these powers start coming, the walls moved closer. Reeve was like kicking off of them, jumping off of them. Great stuff. Like, it was super fun. I am obsessed. Like, it's so cool. The spider stuff was like really cool. The fact that they had webs in the theater, like, you'll never see this again. So just to bring it back to the beginning of this, I was shocked to see TV Carpio in Across the Universe, who was Arachne in Spider-Man. Evan Rachel Wood was cast to be the original Mary Jane, and then obviously stuff happened, things were replaced. The choreographer is the same. Obviously, Julie Taymor is in it. So it's like Bono shows up in Across the Universe, and he wrote the music for Spider-Man. So it was around the same time.
I'm sure there were a lot of like dancers that were overlapping as well.
Yeah, so obviously Julie was like super loyal to her cast. I was saying to you off the mic, like Jim Sturgis could have walked in here as a Peter Parker too. So like, I'm surprised it didn't happen. But
where is Jim Sturgis? Where is Jim Sturgis?
Unknown. And where is Julie Taymor, really? Because the last thing that she did theater related was she directed the Broadway revival of Madame Butterfly starring Clive Owen, which I think actually had like pretty decent reviews. But she did co-write The Glorias, a biopic on Gloria Steinem that came out in 2020, and it's on Amazon Prime. So
how is it?
I just think that, like, obviously, again, such a fail what happened with Spider-Man and like being fired from the project, but I hope it doesn't like completely deteriorate her from doing anything super unique and creative ever again, because there are aspects of all of these things that I love and think that it's so cool to push that limit.
I don't think she knows how to do anything any other way.
No.
You know? She doesn't, like, that's just not her. She would never direct something so straight up in this way. She doesn't know, that's not her style to do it so simple. This is her style, to be over the top, so visual, to have this distinct style. Like, that is how she directs. And that's when you hire her, when you bring her onto a project, like, if you're not looking for that, then that's your fault, you know?
Can't wait to see what you do next, Julie. We'll be waiting.
Wait, let's can I close out?
Yeah.
What is your favorite Beatles song, Tara? Just to bring it all the way back.
Oh my God. This is also like, so my parents obviously have listened to the Beatles, but I never I feel like many of my friends in elementary school like had a Beatles phase and I never did. My favorite Beatles song, I actually like have to think about this. That was threw me off. What is your favorite Beatles song?
Okay, it's tough. I think, the good ones are in this movie.
I agree.
In my opinion. But I would go with it. The instrumental only is in this movie, but my favorite Beatles song is "A Day in the Life," and yes, so that's what I would pick as my favorite Beatles song. And I think it was like a Jeff Beck guitar version that they used in the movie.
This is gonna be such a basic answer, but I love "Let It Be."
Sure. Just the emotion.
It's a classic. Yeah.
It is a classic.
I actually was sad that "Help" wasn't in this. I think "Help" is like a really fun song, and I think it could have worked in Across the Universe.
Yeah, like it's one that seems like it would be super simple to adapt into a jukebox situation.
Yeah.
But no, not in there.
I wonder what happened there with that one.
Yeah, it is interesting. They have with a little help from my friends, which is
that's
not
also
help,
fun.
But yeah.
There, again, as we said, there are many, many hits, obviously, and I'm sure we will see another Beatles iteration of a musical movie.
They'll do
in the near future. Honestly, that's our thoughts on really everything here across the universe, Lion King, and mostly Spider-Man and Julie Taymor. With that being said, it is now time for our obsession of the week.
Okay, so my obsession this week, you know, I have a list of musicals that I've never listened to that I just want to like get through and like try and listen to different songs from. And I hear inspiration, someone tweets something, and I put it down on a list and I go to listen to it. So this week I listened to a song from the musical Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. It's called Here I Am. It's sung by Sheree Renee Scott. I don't know what's going on in the plot at this moment. I just know she has like the greatest voice, and it's just like kind of like a sassy, flirty, like funny song, and it's short. It's like under 3 minutes long. She just sounds absolutely fantastic on it. And also written by David Yazbek, who is hit or miss for me, but this was a hit. This song specifically is a hit. So I would recommend listening to that song and then kind of venturing out to the rest of the cast recording. Here I Am, Sheree Renee Scott on Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
You've picked out David Yazbek in the last 2 episodes, and I listened to Model Behavior fully because I was putting it in our last episode. I was like, this song is amazing.
Laura Grant did that.
David Yazbek, hit or miss. Obviously, Tootsie, a miss.
A huge miss on Tootsie. I like, obviously the band's visit, like the hit of that is the music. The miss is the rest of the show, in my opinion. Right. But the hit is the music.
Yes. No, I agree.
You know, he's done lots of like different adaptations. And I think like, you know, Woman on the Verge was a miss, but there are like a few little hits in there. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels like ran for like a year and a bit. People mixed reviews, but I think this song is like really fun. I think he's an interesting composer, someone interesting to think about.
His style is very different for what show that he's in. And speaking of the band's visit for a second, Katrina Lenk was also an Arachne in Spider-Man.
Right, that's right. You're right.
So Katrina is back on Broadway soon, so she's doing it right.
Can't wait, girl.
Okay, my obsession is something that I have had on a list since February. I've been waiting for an episode to do this because as soon as I found it, I was like, this is amazing. And I didn't ever think that a Spider-Man episode would see the light of day, but here we are. So, back in February, on TikTok, obviously, where I see everything, there was a girl that exposed the fact that Imagine Dragons did the demos for Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Did you not know this?
No, I only learned this year, and I was like, it's still questionable because there was like really only one article on this.
Right,
and
the sources are low.
It's like a Yahoo article, and I don't know if I trust it, but I am like so obsessed with it, and now I can't think of Radioactive any other way.
Yes.
And I also think that like, first of all, Radioactive, an amazing song, smash hit of 2012. But I think of that song, and I was like, the entire tone of Spider-Man would have been different if Imagine Dragons did the score. Like, so different. And so this sort of like sketchy backstory of this, because I actually don't know if it's true, it's all allegedly whatever, is that Imagine Dragons was like an up-and-coming band at the time, and music producer Alex da Kid, who I have literally no idea who this man is, was looking for inspiration to bring to Bono and The Edge. I don't even know if we talked about this on the mic, but off the mic we were talking about the fact that Bono and The Edge were like super busy, had no time to write the Spider-Man.
They're busy guys. You know, in the book at one point they talked about, you know, Bono was like late one day and he was like, what's more important than this? And he was meeting with Obama. Like like, they're busy people.
So I think, like, because of that, this producer was looking for, like, up-and-coming talent to help bring ideas to, like, spark inspiration for Bono and The Edge, and had brought them... well, no, it didn't actually reach Bono and The Edge because he had listened to Radioactive and Demons and was like, this is too good for this musical, guys. You better keep this for yourself. And then, obviously, they came out with their debut album in 2012, and the TikTok video is this girl being like... Now think of these Imagine Dragons songs as discarded Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark music, and you can never see it any other way. And I was like, I can never see it any other way.
I'm just looking at the track list. So obviously Radioactive is the most obvious one.
Yeah.
Then you've got like Demons, sure. The other one that's jumping out to me is On Top of the World. Like,
yes, but that tonally that tonally is very different than Radioactive and Demons.
Sure, but that's like your romantic ballad, let's say, or like your, not a ballad, but like your romantic moment, or like you're flying or something. I see it. It's very funny.
When I heard this news in February, obviously like years late to the game, I immediately told my brother about this. My brother Corey and I always like talk about these random things, obviously because he's seen Spider-Man as well. And we literally just like started thinking about how different this musical would be and how incredible it would be to have Radioactive. Just the beginning, especially when like Spider-Man is debuting to the audience, to hear that like... I think that's
like a transformation song, like trying out his powers. You see him like shooting webs for the first time.
I'm obsessed. I love it so much. So yeah, we've brought it back again to Spider-Man, and now I think I can officially say, actually I won't say that officially because I'm sure we'll talk about it again, but we will never dive into it as much as we have today. So you're welcome, everybody, and thank you for letting me get that out. And with that, it's the end of our episode. So if you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2.
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.